The dig site in southern Turkey had been quiet for 3 weeks. Nothing but dirt, rocks, and the occasional pottery shard that made the younger archaeologists excited, but meant little to the veterans who had seen it all before. Dr. James Harrow wiped sweat from his forehead and looked at the cloudless sky above. Another day of finding nothing important, he thought. But then his shovel hit something that was not rock or clay. The sound was different, almost musical, like striking a bell made of glass. James froze. In his 20 years of digging up the past, he had never heard anything like it. He dropped to his knees and began brushing away the dirt with his hands. The other workers noticed his sudden interest and gathered around. Slowly, an object began to appear from the earth. It was about the size of a football, perfectly smooth, and it glowed with a soft blue light that seemed to come from deep within. "What in the world?" James whispered. The object was not made of any material he recognized. It was not metal, not stone, not glass. It felt warm to the touch, almost alive. Strange symbols covered its surface, shifting and changing as he watched, like writing that could not decide what it wanted to say. James had found many artifacts in his career. He had held pieces of history that were thousands of years old, but he knew instantly that this was different. This was not made by human hands. This was something else entirely. The news spread quickly. Within hours, the Turkish site was surrounded by military vehicles and scientists from around the world. Within days, the object was moved to a secure facility in Switzerland, where the best minds on Earth could study it without interruption. Dr. Sarah Miller was one of those minds. She was a physicist who specialized in things that should not exist. Her colleagues called her field impossible science, and she wore the title with pride. When she first saw the artifact, sitting on a white table in a clean room, she felt her heart skip. "It's not giving off any radiation we can detect," said her assistant, a young man named Tom. "No heat, no electromagnetic signature, nothing. But it's clearly doing something. Look at those lights." The artifact's glow pulsed slowly, like a heartbeat. The symbols on its surface continued their endless dance, forming patterns that almost made sense before dissolving into something new. Sarah walked around the table, studying the object from every angle. She had spent her entire life searching for proof that the universe held secrets beyond human understanding. Now here it was, sitting in front of her, practically begging to be figured out. "Has anyone tried to open it?" she asked. Tom shook his head. "Nobody wants to be the first. What if it's dangerous?" Sarah smiled. "Everything is dangerous until we understand it. That's the whole point of science." She reached out and touched the artifact. The moment her fingers made contact, the symbols stopped moving. The glow brightened, and Sarah felt something in her mind, like a door opening to a room she never knew existed. Images flooded her thoughts. She saw stars being born and dying. She saw civilizations rising across countless worlds. She saw beings of light and shadow, ancient and powerful, watching the universe unfold like a story they had read 1,000 times before. And she saw Earth. She saw humans crawling out of caves and building fires. She saw them looking up at the stars and wondering what was out there. She saw their endless questions, their relentless curiosity, their stubborn refusal to accept that anything was truly unknowable. The artifact was showing her something. It was showing her why it was here. Sarah pulled her hand back with a gasp. She was shaking. Tom rushed to her side, asking if she was okay, but she barely heard him. Her mind was still processing what she had seen. "It's a test," she said softly. "This whole thing is a test." Over the following weeks, the best scientists on Earth gathered at the facility. They came from every country, speaking dozens of languages, but united by a single purpose. The artifact became the most studied object in human history. Every tool, every technique, every theory was applied to understanding it. And slowly, they began to make progress. Dr. Chen Wei, a mathematician from Beijing, was the first to crack the symbols. He had spent 3 sleepless nights staring at recordings of the shifting patterns, searching for order in the chaos. Finally, at 4 in the morning, he saw it. "It's not random," he announced to the assembled team. "It's a language, a mathematical language based on prime numbers and geometric relationships. The symbols aren't changing randomly. They're teaching us how to read them." The breakthrough opened new doors. Once they understood the language, they could start translating the artifact's messages, and the messages were astonishing. The artifact was indeed a test, left behind by beings who had existed long before humans walked the earth. These beings, who called themselves the Architects, had seeded the galaxy with similar devices millions of years ago. The artifacts were designed to be found, but only by species that had reached a certain level of development. Only by species that were curious enough to keep pushing, to keep asking questions, to keep seeking answers no matter how difficult the search. Most species that found the artifacts gave up. They were content with what they already knew. They saw the strange object, decided it was beyond understanding, and moved on with their lives. The artifacts sat buried and forgotten, waiting for someone with enough determination to unlock their secrets. But humans were different. Humans never stopped asking why. Dr. Viktor Petrov, a Russian engineer, was the one who finally figured out how to activate the artifact's full potential. He had been studying the mathematical language for weeks, slowly building a vocabulary of concepts and commands. One night, almost by accident, he spoke a sequence of prime numbers in the right order. The artifact responded. The blue glow exploded into a brilliant display of light that filled the entire room. The symbols stopped shifting and locked into a stable pattern, and a voice spoke directly into the minds of everyone present. "You have proven yourselves worthy," the voice said. "You have looked upon the unknown and refused to turn away. You have asked questions when others would have accepted ignorance. You have reached for understanding when others would have chosen fear." The scientists stood frozen, unable to speak, unable to move. This was the moment everything changed. "We left these gifts for those who would seek them," the voice continued. "Within this device is knowledge that will transform your species. The secrets of energy, of travel between stars, of life itself. All of this is now yours because you had the courage to be curious." The artifact opened, not physically, but in a way that defied description. Information began pouring out of it, flowing into computers and recording devices and human minds. Blueprints for technology centuries beyond anything Earth had ever imagined. Formulas for power sources that could run forever. Maps of the galaxy showing worlds where other species had passed the same test. Sarah Miller stood in the center of the chaos, tears streaming down her face. She had dreamed of this moment her entire life. She had always believed that humanity's greatest strength was its curiosity, its endless drive to understand the world around it. Now that belief had been proven true in the most spectacular way possible. "What do we do now?" Tom asked, his voice shaking. Sarah wiped her eyes and smiled. "Now we learn, and then we go out there and see what else is waiting to be discovered." The news of the artifact's opening spread across Earth within hours. People gathered in streets and squares, watching the announcements on screens and phones. There was fear, of course. Change always brought fear. But there was also hope. For the first time in human history, everyone on the planet was united by a single incredible truth. They were not alone, and they had just taken their first step into a much larger universe. In laboratories and universities around the world, scientists began studying the knowledge that the artifact had shared. The first breakthrough came within weeks. Dr. Zhang Lin, a young physicist from Shanghai, used the new formulas to create a generator that produced clean, unlimited energy from nothing but hydrogen and mathematics. Her device was no bigger than a shoebox, but it could power an entire city. The energy crisis that had plagued Earth for generations disappeared overnight. Oil and coal became worthless. The skies began to clear as factories switched to the new power source. Wars that had been fought over resources suddenly had no point. But the energy was only the beginning. The artifact had shared so much more. Dr. Marcus Brown, a biologist from Atlanta, decoded the medical knowledge hidden in the artifact's data. He found cures for diseases that had killed millions. Cancer, Alzheimer's, heart disease, all could now be treated with simple procedures that any doctor could learn. Human lifespans, the artifact suggested, could be extended far beyond anything previously imagined. We were dying of things that other species cured millions of years ago, Marcus said in an interview that was watched by billions. But now we have the answers. Now we can save everyone. The world changed faster than anyone had predicted. Problems that had seemed impossible suddenly had solutions. Hunger ended as new agricultural techniques spread across the planet. Poverty faded as unlimited energy made goods cheap and abundant. The old divisions between nations began to blur as humanity united around a shared future. But not everyone was happy with the changes. General William Stone sat in his Pentagon office, staring at the latest report on the artifact's effects. He was an old soldier who had spent his career preparing for threats. Now the biggest threat he could imagine was sitting in a Swiss laboratory, giving away secrets that could destroy everything he had sworn to protect. "We don't know what else is in that thing," he said to his advisors. "We don't know who left it or why. For all we know, this could be the biggest trap in history." His concerns were not unreasonable. The artifact had been left by beings who had existed millions of years ago. What were their real motives? Why would they share such powerful knowledge with a species they had never met? The universe, Stone believed, was not kind. Nothing was ever free. But his warnings fell on deaf ears. The world was too excited about the possibilities to worry about the dangers. The artifact was studied, celebrated, and praised as the greatest gift humanity had ever received. Dr. Sarah Miller became the most famous scientist on Earth. She gave speeches to world leaders, appeared on every news program, and wrote a book about the discovery that sold more copies than any book in history. She believed completely in the promise of the artifact. She believed that human curiosity had earned them a place among the stars. But even she had doubts sometimes. Late at night, alone in her office, she would think about the vision the artifact had shown her. Those ancient beings, watching the universe unfold like a story they had read 1,000 times before. What were they really planning? What happened to the other species that passed the test? The questions kept her awake, but in the morning she would push them aside and return to work. There was too much to do, too much to learn. The universe was calling, and humanity was finally ready to answer. The first spaceship using the artifact's technology was built in Nevada, in a desert facility that had once been used for testing nuclear weapons. The ship was called the Horizon, and it was nothing like anything humans had ever built before. It did not need rockets or fuel. It moved by bending space itself, jumping from one point to another in the blink of an eye. Captain Elena Vasquez was chosen to lead the first mission. She was a former astronaut who had dreamed of reaching the stars since she was a child watching rockets launch from her grandmother's backyard. Now that dream was about to come true. "We have no idea what's out there," she said to her crew on the night before launch. "We could find friends, we could find enemies, we could find nothing but empty space, but whatever we find, we're going to face it together. That's what humans do." The Horizon launched at dawn, watched by billions of people around the world. It rose silently into the morning sky, then vanished in a flash of light as it jumped across the galaxy. The journey that would have taken thousands of years with conventional rockets was completed in seconds. They emerged near a star system that the artifact had marked as inhabited. And there, orbiting a green and blue world that looked remarkably like Earth, they found something incredible. A fleet of ships was waiting for them, but they were not warships. They were decorated with lights and banners, clearly arranged for celebration. and as the horizon approached, a message came through on all frequencies. "Welcome," the message said. "We have been waiting for you. You are the newest members of the great family. Your curiosity has brought you home." The architects, it turned out, had not just left artifacts. They had created an entire network of species that had passed the test. Hundreds of civilizations spread across the galaxy, all connected by their shared virtue of curiosity. They traded knowledge and resources. They explored the unknown together. They celebrated each new species that joined their ranks. And now humanity was one of them. Captain Vasquez stepped off the horizon onto an alien world for the first time in human history. She was greeted by beings of every shape and size, creatures that had evolved on worlds beyond imagination. Some had lived among the stars for millions of years. Others, like humans, had just arrived. But they all shared one thing in common. They had all been curious enough to find the artifacts. They had all been determined enough to unlock their secrets. They had all refused to accept ignorance when understanding was possible. "You humans are remarkable," said a being that looked like a collection of floating crystals. "Most species take generations to decode the artifact's language. You did it in weeks. We have been watching you since you first touched the device. Your curiosity is extraordinary." Vasquez smiled. "It's what we do. We can't help it. We see something we don't understand and we have to figure it out. It drives us crazy until we find the answers." The crystal being made a sound that might have been laughter. "That is why you will go far. That is why we welcome you with open arms. The universe needs more species like you, species that will never stop asking why." The news of first contact with the galactic community sent shockwaves through Earth. For most people, it was the most exciting moment in history. Proof that humanity was not alone, that they had joined a vast family of intelligent beings, that the future held wonders beyond imagination. But for some, like General Stone, the news only deepened their suspicions. "They say they've been watching us," he said to anyone who would listen. "They say they knew exactly what we would do with the artifact. That doesn't sound like a gift to me. That sounds like an experiment." His warnings continued to be ignored. The world was too busy celebrating to worry about conspiracy theories from an old soldier. Trade agreements were signed with alien civilizations. Human ambassadors were sent to distant worlds. The horizon made jump after jump, exploring the galaxy with a speed that would have seemed impossible just months before. But Stone was patient. He gathered allies among those who shared his concerns. He built secret facilities where weapons were developed using the artifact's technology. He prepared for a war that he was certain was coming, even if no one else could see it. And far away, in a corner of the galaxy that no one had yet explored, something ancient was waking up. The architects had left more than artifacts. They had left guardians too, and the guardians had rules. Rules that humanity was about to break. Dr. Sarah Miller was in her laboratory when the first warning came. The artifact, which had been quiet since sharing its knowledge, suddenly blazed with light. Its symbols shifted faster than ever before, forming a message that she had never seen. "Warning," the message said. "Forbidden path detected. Correction protocol initiated." Sarah felt her blood run cold. She did not know what the message meant, but she knew with absolute certainty that humanity had just made a terrible mistake. The universe, it turned out, had rules, and the architects had built systems to enforce them. Humanity's endless curiosity had unlocked incredible secrets, but some secrets they were about to learn were forbidden for a reason. General Stone had been right about one thing: nothing was ever free, and the payment for humanity's knowledge was about to come due. The warning on the artifact continued to pulse for 3 days without stopping. Scientists from around the world studied it, trying to understand what humanity had done wrong. But the message remained cryptic. Forbidden path detected. Correction protocol initiated. What did it mean? What path? What correction? Dr. Sarah Miller barely slept during those 3 days. She felt responsible. She had been the first to touch the artifact, the first to receive its visions. If humanity had made a mistake, she needed to be the one to fix it. On the 4th day, the answer came. A ship appeared in Earth's orbit. It was not like the decorated vessels of the galactic community. It was black, enormous, and completely silent. It did not respond to any communication attempts. It simply hung in space, watching. "That's not a friendly ship," Captain Vasquez said from the bridge of the horizon, which had rushed back to Earth at the first sign of trouble. "I've seen the designs in the artifacts database. That's an architect vessel, an original one. It's millions of years old." The galactic community had warned humanity about this. The architects had disappeared long ago, but they had left systems running. Automated systems designed to protect the universe from threats that the younger species could not understand. These systems were called the corrections, and they were activated only when someone broke the oldest rules. "What rules did we break?" Sarah demanded. The answer came from the artifact itself. Its symbols rearranged one final time, spelling out a message in the mathematical language that humanity had learned. Species violation, weaponization of gifted knowledge. Article 7 of the Seeding Protocol states that all knowledge shared through the artifacts must be used for advancement, not destruction. Violation detected. Correction required. Sarah's heart sank. She knew immediately what had happened. General Stone, his secret facilities, his weapons programs. He had taken the artifact's knowledge and used it to build instruments of war. "We have to stop this," she said. "We have to show them that Stone doesn't speak for all of humanity." But showing was not enough. The architect vessel began to move, positioning itself over Earth's major population centers. Panic spread across the planet. Military forces mobilized but knew they were powerless against technology that was millions of years beyond their own. And then something unexpected happened. A transmission burst from the black vessel, not in the mathematical language of the architects but in English. Someone or something was trying to communicate. "Species designated human. You have been observed since first contact with seeding device. Your curiosity coefficient exceeds all recorded measurements. Your adaptation rate is unprecedented. These factors have been weighed against your violation." Sarah held her breath. Query: was the violation authorized by your species as a whole, or committed by individuals acting against your collective will? It was a question, a chance. The architects, or whatever system they had left behind, was asking for an explanation. It was not simply executing judgment. It was giving humanity a chance to defend itself. Sarah grabbed the nearest communication device. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold it. "The violation was committed by individuals," she said, her voice cracking. "The majority of our species used the knowledge as intended, for medicine, for energy, for exploration. The weapons programs were secret. Most of us didn't even know they existed." There was a long pause. The vessel remained still. The planet held its breath. Processing response. Accessing genetic diversity records. Cultural analysis initiated. 1 moment. Sarah thought she might faint. The fate of all humanity was being decided by a machine that was older than their solar system. Everything depended on what happened in the next few seconds. Analysis complete. Another pause. Species designated human displays high variance in individual behavior. Collective responsibility model deemed inappropriate. Correction protocol modified. Targeted intervention authorized. The black vessel moved, but it did not attack cities or populations. Instead, it targeted specific locations. General Stone's secret facilities were destroyed in an instant, vaporized by beams of light that left no trace behind. The weapons programs vanished as if they had never existed. Stone himself survived, but only barely. He was found wandering in the Nevada desert, his memories of the past months completely erased. He remembered nothing about artifacts or alien technology or plans for war. He was just an old soldier again, confused and lost. The vessel remained in orbit for one more day. Then a final message came. Correction complete. Warning recorded in species file. Future violations will result in full protocol activation. Species designated human is granted one opportunity. Use wisdom with knowledge. Your curiosity has saved you once. It will not save you twice. The black ship vanished as suddenly as it had appeared. Earth was left shaken but alive. Humanity had survived its first real test since joining the galactic community. But the lesson was clear. Curiosity could unlock incredible secrets, but those secrets came with responsibility. The universe had rules, and even the most curious species had to learn to follow them. In the aftermath of the crisis, the world finally united in a way it never had before. Governments that had competed for generations signed treaties of cooperation. Scientists who had worked in secret programs came forward with confessions, determined that such mistakes would never happen again. The artifact was moved to a new facility, one that was open to researchers from every nation. Its knowledge continued to flow, but now there were strict rules about how it could be used. Medical advances, energy technology, space exploration. These were celebrated and shared, but weapons, even defensive ones, were forbidden. Dr. Sarah Miller became the head of a new organization called the Human Curiosity Council. Its mission was to ensure that humanity's greatest strength never again became a weakness, to guide the species as it explored the universe, to remember always that with great knowledge came great responsibility. She gave a speech at the organization's founding ceremony that was watched by billions. "We have been given a gift beyond price," she said. "The chance to reach for the stars, the chance to learn secrets that species across the galaxy have spent millions of years discovering, but we've also learned that gifts come with obligations." She paused, looking at the crowd that stretched to the horizon. "We're human. We can't help being curious. It's in our nature to ask questions, to seek answers, to refuse to accept that anything is truly unknowable. That's what got us here. That's what made us worthy of joining the galactic family." Her voice grew stronger. "But we have to be more than just curious. We have to be wise. We have to understand that not every question needs to be answered with a weapon. We have to remember that the universe is bigger than our fears and older than our conflicts. We're children among ancient beings, and children have a lot to learn." She smiled. "So let's learn, let's explore, let's discover every secret the universe has to offer, but let's do it together as one species, one family, reaching for the light instead of shrinking from the dark. That's the human way. That's why we're here. And that's why someday we'll be the ones leaving artifacts for species we haven't yet imagined." The crowd erupted in applause. Around the world, people cheered and cried and held each other close. The crisis had brought them to the edge of destruction, but it had also shown them what they could be when they chose to be their best selves. In the years that followed, humanity flourished. The medical advances from the artifact extended human lifespans to hundreds of years. The energy technology transformed Earth into a paradise of clean air and unlimited power. The space program expanded exponentially, with human ships exploring distant stars and making contact with species that had passed the same test millennia before. Captain Elena Vasquez led expedition after expedition into the unknown. Each journey brought new discoveries, new allies, new wonders. She became the most celebrated explorer in human history, her name spoken with reverence across dozens of worlds. But she never forgot the lesson of the correction. "Every time I look at a new star," she told an interviewer decades later, "I think about how close we came to losing everything, not because of alien enemies or cosmic disasters, because of our own choices. We were saved by our curiosity, but we were also nearly destroyed by our fear. She leaned back in her chair, her eyes distant with memory. The universe rewards those who reach for understanding. That's the real message of the artifacts. Not just that we should be curious, but that curiosity should lead to wisdom, to growth, to becoming something better than we were. That's what the architects wanted to teach us. That's why they left those gifts for species like ours to find. Dr. Sarah Miller lived to be 300 years old, thanks to the medical advances she had helped develop. In her final years, she wrote a memoir that became required reading for every human child. The book ended with a passage that was later inscribed on monuments across Earth and on 100 distant worlds. We were curious. That was our gift. We looked at the universe and refused to believe that it held no answers. We asked questions that others thought were foolish. We pushed against boundaries that others accepted as permanent. We reached for stars that others said were unreachable. And when we finally grasped those stars, we learned something even more important, that the greatest secret of the universe was not hidden in artifacts or ancient technology. It was hidden in our own hearts, in our willingness to wonder, in our refusal to give up, in our endless, unquenchable hunger to understand. That is what made us worthy. That is what saved us when we stumbled. That is what will carry us forward into whatever futures await. We are human, we are curious, and the universe, vast and ancient and full of mysteries, is our home now. The end.